If you ever find that friend who says yes when everyone else is asking, are you sure? No, hold on to them very tightly. For me, that is Bree Breezy. She is my yes woman, the side quester of all side questers. She dropped out, packed up her life, and moved across the country with me to Charleston, South Carolina on a whim. Since then, she's done the couch hopping. She's traveled the world, 15 countries, 40 states. She is self-taught, started her own business, built her own software, her own application. She has become one of the most interesting, well-rounded, and best educated people I've met in my entire life, and it is an honor to call her one of my best friends. Bree, welcome to the pod.
We are talking about 5 ways to be a more interesting person because we are tired of having boring conversations.
Yeah. Tired of being around boring conversations, but also ourselves. Like, in between us, I've seen an evolution of our conversations being like, wow, okay, don't just ask me how you are, you know?
Yeah. I've told my friends that I've averaged the same word volume per year, but the content that I've said has increased in value drastically. There's 3 types of people. There's people who open doors for themselves. There's people who walk through already open doors. And there's people who stay locked outside forever. And we don't want to be part of that last category. I don't think anyone does. Part of the issue is they don't realize that they are locked outside the door, though. So we're going to talk about all of that.
Yeah, and I think if you've ever faced a situation, I know I have, because you're not just innately interesting. Sometimes, like, it is a thing you can work on, like a skill, whatever. I don't know if you've ever been at, like, a dinner table or whatever. For me, it was my family dinners, because my family's funny. I have a rather large family. They all like to talk. They're all very outgoing, and they all tell very interesting stories. And I grew up, and I was like, I never felt like I was a part of the conversation, because they're out here laughing, making funny, really, really funny jokes and whatever, and having the confidence to do it. And I just kind of felt invisible. I felt like I wasn't a part of the conversation, and I feel like in other parts of life, I sometimes didn't get invited or get the opportunity, and I didn't really realize or name it. It's because I was uninteresting. But the really cool thing is it's not confusing, or it's not this weird, cloudy concept to be an interesting person. There's 5 very specific and acute ways that we've collected that you can be a more interesting person and open more doors for yourself. So what's the first one?
That's a great segue because I think a lot of people blame not being a part of the conversation on it being a situational setting. Like, oh, I didn't have the chance to. When it's like, no, you need to jump in. But the first way to become a more interesting person is learning how to articulate yourself better. When you're sitting at that dinner table, you can put these into practice, because becoming a good speaker has a lot of benefits. You can tell boring stories in an interesting way. And I've seen so many people do this where I become captivated at just the silliest things. Like, I remember a conversation someone told me about a squirrel being in their backyard. And I was just like, wow, this is so cool. And if you literally live anywhere with a 5-foot wide backyard, you've had a squirrel in your backyard. Like, it's not a captivating story at all. But for some reason, when you put it into certain terms, it becomes really interesting. And I know that for me, when I've practiced speaking, like literally talking to myself in the car, I've seen a transition in my speech of becoming a better speaker. A better way to put that.
It's not weird to yap to yourself in your car, y'all. Like, it's actually, I feel like I've developed or prepared for conversations and been able to better articulate in the conversation because I've almost, quote unquote, practiced.
Exactly.
But, like, this rehearsal, it's not weird. I don't know, whatever stigma there is around that. The point is, you're actually being a more respectful person to the receiver of that conversation or whatever you have to say, because you can more clearly communicate. Like, literally exploring your words and your thoughts and your feelings, and either saying it out loud, processing it, writing it, whatever. If you can explore it more, that step alone will open up and unlock better articulation when you speak, which is really cool.
Yeah. So to clarify, this first point is to be more interesting, become a better speaker, be able to tell your stories better. And in order to accomplish this, practice speaking. I don't think there's any such thing as coming to a conversation over-prepared. There's only under-prepared, and it shows. The second thing is cutting out filler words.
Yeah.
Things
Oh,
like, and so, which I'm probably going to say 100 times throughout this podcast, and
hey,
now
no shame if
everyone's
you
going to
do.
be, wait, why did she say don't do this? And then immediately does it. But there's a really good, immediately followed up, because that was just me giving an
An
example of what not
example,
to do.
right?
The South Park writers do a really good job of showing how painful this is. They have an episode where they talk about how childish you sound if you say and then, because you're completely removing any tension that you've built up in your story by using the words and.
Yeah, so then they had the episode is, or isn't their entire theory, the writers, like, it's always,
Exactly.
but then, I did this for one of my short storytelling reels. I was like, but then this happened, but then this happened. And it was definitely an interesting experiment for me to practice that and be really intentional about it. I think a lot of people add filler words too because they're just uncomfortable with silence.
Yeah.
And silence is great. Silence is a cool thing. Silence allows tension, allows pacing. And it's just, once you hear this, you can't unhear it. Like, once you hear some people speaking, you're going to start analyzing, like, what are they saying and how are they saying this? Pacing is really important too. And emphasis. Emphasis is huge. You know, it's like, there's so many ways in which you can build the habit of trying to improve your speech into your daily conversations, I feel like. Especially learning from others.
Yeah.
There's no better way than to just observe and apply that knowledge immediately.
That's a really good point. Tone makes you a super powerful speaker, and the power of the pause is insane. So I feel like body language is another aspect that comes into play. A lot of what we say is communicated by how we move and gestures.
That's true. And even, like, I think the big one I notice in conversations is if someone's pointing their feet away from you, that's literally a sign like they're ready to cut the conversation short. And people don't even realize they're doing it. But you start to pick up on these little cues of emotional intelligence and the body signals and all this stuff. And you can become better adapted to just like these. It's a soft skill. I feel like it's a soft skill, but soft skills are becoming one of the most valuable skills in our era of existence as AI takes over these more technical skills, you know? Becoming better with human interaction is really cool. So that's on the line.
Yeah, I have 2 points with that. One, I read this book called Split the Difference, which is really good.
Wait, never split the difference?
Never Split the Difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, Never Split the Difference. It's written by a FBI hostage negotiator, and he offers some really cool insights into the psychology of speech. 2 of the things that I remember that I try to practice in the conversation, but it's really hard when you're in the moment to implement these things. Yeah. But one of them is mirroring people. So, for example, if Sid said, "How's your day today?" I would repeat the last 3 words of what she said, which is basically the whole phrase.
Yeah, that's cool.
And the point of mirroring is to put it back to the person so that they feel as though you're reflecting the conversation onto them, and it makes them feel better about themselves, because who doesn't like to talk about themselves?
Yeah.
You know, and it's supposed to be welcoming and
interesting.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I have a point on the mirroring thing too. Not necessarily the same, but I work with a developer, and he lives in Japan, but he's Indian. And him and his team, obviously English is their second language. They're all from India. And one of the things they do, which I find really impressive actually, is after I've explained a scenario or they read the notes or whatever, they just say, "Okay, let me repeat this back to you and demonstrate whether I have a good understanding of your objectives and everything else or not." And that clarity comes like instantly. It's like, "No, I think you misunderstood that point." And just that one question or that one, I guess, sequence of repeating that back, their understanding, can save you buttloads of hours of wasted works. And so I guess just in a more professional setting, and even in an emotional setting, an emotional conversation, like, "Oh, let me get this straight. You feel this way because this happened, and I did this, and blah, blah, blah." And I think giving that back to someone, like you said, again, opens this door and recognizes them. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, that actually reminded me of the second point, which is
good, we're back.
what he called labeling. And it's you can mislabel something intentionally or label it correctly. So if it seems like you're upset, I could say, "Oh, it seems like you're upset," and open the door for you to then elaborate on that,
Yeah.
which is super powerful. But you can also mislabel it and be like, "Oh, it seems like you're really happy," and you have to use it strategically. But it's another way for you to correct me then and be like, "No, I'm actually really upset because."
Yeah, it kind of allows that. Yeah, it's definitely not important. I guess it's definitely important not to tell someone how they feel and let them explain how they feel. I think that is a big EQ or emotional intelligence like understanding that is like I think a lot of people miss out on. And it causes more friction. Like the root of all problems and arguments is ultimately misunderstanding.
So the last thing that I'll say on this is with the science of AI prompting coming to light, I hope that it carries over into actual conversations, because with chat or Claude, if you give a good input, you get a better output. And I don't think that people treat conversations like this.
It's true.
The best example that I can think of is we always ask the questions, how are you? What's new? And especially with what's new, people are just socially conditioned to say nothing. Like nothing is new.
And that's good and I'm fine.
Yeah, that's such a lame response. It closes the door. Like, I don't have a response to give to you after you say that.
You give me no details to elaborate with you on.
Yeah. And when you are the person that is asking that question, you can, if you change the question that you're giving, like I'll say, what have you learned recently? I can instantly see gears turning. Or what was the highlight of your week? If you change it up a little bit, you're going to get a better response. And if you're the person being asked that question, what's new with you, and you don't say nothing, you're instantly more memorable.
Yeah,
because
that's
you
true.
You gave a better response. You gave them something to work with. And so it's super easy ways to use basic conversation to your advantage.
Yeah, and I think for the most part, I think most people who ask how are you, they genuinely care. Like there's some people who are just being polite, I feel like, and you can kind of gauge that situation, or there's no time or whatever, but I think 90% of the time if someone asks how are you, they really actually want to know. And like you said, you can immediately become a more interesting person. And with the having a more interesting input gives you a more interesting output. Like we treat places, employees, coworkers, whatever, like they're dull, but we didn't take any responsibility or take a slice of that pie of I have a say in how interesting this ends up, you know? And Bree's done a really good job about this. Like every time we're with her friends, we hang out, she asks a very dialed question and it prompts so much better. And I think the most interesting and the cool thing about who we surround ourselves with is Bree asks us what is new that we have learned. And we're all working on such unique but also useful and interesting things. And being surrounded by people like that really, I guess, just kick your brain into gear and gets you thinking and excited and the novelty of it. Another point I wanted to make with that too is if you can provide someone examples, like if you're asking maybe a more complex question. For example, at the beginning, I was coaching lacrosse this season. It's still going on, it's almost done, but at the beginning of the season, I made a commitment that I was going to speak to every single player on the team at the beginning for 10-15 minutes and just get to know them as people outside of lacrosse, because that creates obviously team bonding, connection, and also just better response to feedback. And in that process, it was really interesting to hear everyone respond differently and speak differently. And like some people I really had to dive deeper and dig deeper and ask more dialed questions to get a response on them. And some of them like that, just lay it on the floor, girl. You're waterfalling, like flow state on what's up with and who are you. And so that range to explore, it was like 63 conversations in the matter of 3-4 weeks. That range I got to experience in such a short period of time taught me a lot actually about how do I, especially for these more dry conversations, those were the hard ones, right? How do I kick up dust here? Like, how do I get things going with this? And one of the things I realized was useful was providing an example. If you ask a question, you can gear it towards an actual valuable response by providing the example of what it was. So one of the questions was, what are some of your hobbies? And immediately they'd all revert back to the other sports that they play, but I don't care as much about that. Like, do you bake? Do you like to go hiking? Do you obsess over music? And at the beginning of those conversations, I wasn't asking those questions. I got such dry answers. Then I started providing examples, and you could see a spark in their eyes. It was like, oh, actually, I do this. And then it's like, no, I don't do that, but I do this. It's kind of like either they find a relation to what you just said or the opposite of what you just said, or new lanes. So I think that's really an interesting way to get a better response out of people, too.
I think that's also a good way to almost selfishly lead the conversation. If you have an output that you want to get out of a conversation, don't be afraid to ask questions leading to that output. Like, that's why I asked people, what have you learned recently? Because I want to steal the information that they have learned.
Literally, yeah.
Like, I'm one person, I can only absorb so much. If I can take on what my friends learn, and I know that my friends are smart and they know how I think, so they're going to break it down in words that I'll absorb.
Yeah.
But why would you not take advantage of that?
Yeah, that's really cool. I like it.
So the second thing that I'll say is, to be a more interesting person, put yourself in interesting environments. I think one of the hard things with this is you can move where you are, which is really difficult, but so worth it if you've never left your hometown.
Yeah.
You know, exploring new places,
Oh, yeah.
You automatically see a different perspective.
Yeah.
And then the second way to do that is to change your friend group. Are there any other ways you think you can change your environment? Oh, the media you consume.
Yeah, the media
Books,
is huge.
podcasts. That's probably the easiest way you can change. Such a quick, instant upgrade. Instead of listening to music, maybe turn on a podcast.
Yeah. Instead of watching the reality dating TV show where it's just drama, maybe turn on a podcast or try a different format of media consumption. But I know that I observe people, and the people who fill their consumption with drama, all these reality TV shows, The Bachelorette, all this stuff. It's like, that's cool. I respect that. I know it's entertaining. I watch them sometimes myself. But genuinely, I see a difference in like these people and the amount of drama that escapes their mouths and that surrounds them, and the people who don't consume that type of thing. The fourth thing I was going to add to your list is, what is in your immediate environment, like your room?
Yeah, that's
if
true.
you look around this room, it's filled with things of creation. It's filled with notebooks, music. I have this ukulele here. Like, just by putting this out on the table, my journal, I have a whiteboard, books to learn from. Just by putting this out, you have a much more likely chance to pick it up and strum a few chords. And like, maybe that will take you somewhere special. Or your journal, it's like, or you're learning, like, it's just like, if it's there and you can see it, you're going to be much more likely to act with it. So stop hiding these pieces of inputs in some drawer. Put them in immediate spaces. And the cool thing is, this room is also surrounded with my art that I've created. Paintings, ceramics, etc. And you don't have to be an artist to do this and to surround your space with what you've created. But by being in this place filled with creation and what I've created, I'm more empowered to create solutions, find different opportunities, and ultimately be a more creative individual, which ultimately leads to you being a more interesting person.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think one example in my life is I have a pull-up bar outside my bedroom door, and I used to not be able to do a pull-up. But now, since it's there, like, every time I enter the room, I'm like, I should just try. I should just see if I can do it today. And now I can do like 2 pull-ups.
That's legit.
Yeah. So those little tiny input changes that you might not think are that big of a deal.
They stack.
Like, I didn't even bring that. We put that up for my boyfriend. That wasn't even for me. Yeah. It's like made a change in my life. It's super cool to see that. Another thing that I thought about while you were talking is the places that you visit. There's a constant network effect with where you go. Like, for me, I'm constantly visiting coffee shops, and it's led to so many quick exchanges that have been super cool. Like, I've gotten invited to go play tennis with people I didn't know. Or, I mean, you've met clients out in Charleston. Yeah.
You met a client for me.
I met a real estate client for you at a coffee shop who overheard a conversation that I was having, and for some reason thought that my engineering conversation was about marketing, and it led to a interesting relationship for you out of that. So you're putting yourself in places
Yeah.
where you think you can meet like-minded individuals is super powerful.
That, and I mean, the amount of people who come back from their study abroad trip or a trip overseas for a week, for a month, for 6 months, they come back and they're like, that actually changed my life. And that's what gets people hooked sometimes on traveling. But that repeated over and over and over again, visiting different cultures, different languages, understanding different ways that people live. Once again, it's that novelty, and introducing that novelty into your brain increases blood flow to the center that is, how do I make better decisions? How do I make more creative, better problem solving decisions? And not only is it good for you, it's good for this planet Earth to connect and understand people in their environments and observe and introduce that novelty, because you realize this small little town you grew up in, this household that you live in, the family that you grew up in, the relationship that you're in isn't always right. It's not, there's not one right place. Everyone's different. There's no right and there's no wrong. And you can pick the qualities that you love from every single thing and the qualities that you don't love and craft your own life around it.
Yeah, and I think one thing worth noting is these experiences compound.
Yeah, like they compound. Like
Yeah.
it's exponential, honestly.
Yeah, I think that's kind of all I have on changing your environment. Some of these are easier than others, but
Yeah. Yeah, I will say sometimes it's harder if you don't have a plan of like leaving your city, for example. We had a really interesting experience because you and I left.
yeah.
You and I left Minnesota and we had no other choice but to make new friends. We couldn't have the FOMO. We couldn't cave to the FOMO because we weren't even there in a mile radius within the opportunity or the hangout we used to hang out at. And I think sometimes if you're craving something new, pulling that trigger and being in a new city can change your life. It's hard at the beginning. Like, I won't discount that, but you have to stick it out because there are people waiting for you all over the world. Friends who are waiting for you all over the world. They exist everywhere. They're just waiting to meet you. To think that just because you grew up here and these are the friends you've established, that doesn't mean you can't make more. And that doesn't mean you have to lose the friendships you have either. And it's a really good opportunity too for you to see, like, what are my strongest relationships? Because your strongest relationships, you'll stay in contact, you'll stay in touch, you'll check in with text, you'll see them immediately when you get back. And it's kind of this immediate filter of who really mattered in my life, who really cared about me, and who did I really care about, which is really interesting but difficult thing to explore.
So, based on that response, it sounds like you think maybe leaving your hometown is the biggest or most impactful change of environment that you can make. Do you think that's true?
I think it is.
Okay.
Yeah, I could bet everything on that.
I think I might disagree actually. I think mine might be your relationships, like your friendships. I think that this is the hardest one to change,
Yeah.
but I think that this is the biggest upgrade that you can make in your environment. Like, I've always been told, I'm sure everyone's always been told this, but you're the sum of the 5 people you're closest to.
Yeah.
And I really think that that's true.
I 100% agree.
But it is super hard if you don't like the people that you're around, especially if it's friends that you've grown up with your entire life or literal family members, to change that relationship in a way that makes you who you want to be.
I would say that's huge too. And I think that's a big percentage of what leaving your hometown does. I feel like that falls into leaving your hometown because it forces that change.
Yeah, it creates distance, which if you're around some people that you really benefit from and others that you don't, I guess, you just get a clean slate.
Yeah.
But I think the hardest thing would be to stay in your hometown and try to rebuild relationships.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I can definitely say there's probably a lot more pressure. It's a lot more difficult to do it if you do stick around.
But it's not impossible. It's just
not,
you have to be aware of.
You have to be firm. You have to be firm with yourself. Like, I promised myself I was going to level up.
Yeah. Well, you have to set boundaries for yourself and with others, which is super hard to communicate in conversations sometimes. And you also have to be willing to walk away sometimes, which is the most difficult thing. And
it's causing me more stress and anxiety than it does relief and connection. And I just don't think I can handle it at this point in my life. And that's all it has to be. Like, you don't have to feel like you have to tell them the whole story, I guess. But you owe them closure.
I'll acknowledge that this is really hard to navigate, and it's never worth burning a bridge of someone that is
Yeah.
in that circle of 5 people that you're closest
Yeah.
to. But it is worth walking away at the end of the day, and it just comes down to transparency.
Yeah, just be honest.
So,
yeah, what's the third?
The third is saying yes to things. So I had what I'll call a year of yes, and Sid actually sparked this for me because we moved down to Charleston, like you said, and we took advantage of every opportunity we were presented when we were down there. And I can directly trace a series of events that's like led me to here now by saying yes to different things. Like, I'd never been to Charleston before, but I moved down there with you. And we moved down there even though the person who we were supposed to live with told us that we weren't going to live with her a day before we left. And so we're like scrambling. We start our drive down there with no place to live.
But we went anyway.
Yeah. But
as
then,
hard as that was.
Exactly. Out of this, we gained a super cool relationship because the person that we ended up staying with, Christina, was... I mean, what did her Airbnb bio say? It was insane.
Well,
Princeton
I'll give Brie all the credit.
Graduate.
Yeah, I'll give Brie all the credit for finding her, but we were driving on our way down, we were stressing, and it was like, okay, let's just find a long-term Airbnb, a month. And Brie's like in the car and she reads me this woman's description, and it's like, yeah, I'm a Princeton law grad. I played D1 basketball and professional basketball over in Europe. I blah, 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 I have a dog Goose, and now I'm 50 years old and live my dream living 2 minutes away from the beach or something like that. And
taught herself how to surf at
50 years old. That's so cool. She learned how to surf at 50. And we were like, okay.
Yeah, self-published author.
Cool. Yeah.
She just actually chased her dreams. And we immediately knew, okay, we're going to a new city. We want to surround ourselves with people that we want to be like. And this woman was the description. Yeah. So, like, that's a yes that turned into such an instant win.
Yeah, and she was an example of it's never too late.
Yeah.
It's literally never too late to make a portion of your dream or a part of your dream come true. And she's so glad that she did it.
Exactly. And the whole point in saying this is you have to put yourself in uncomfortable situations. And so when you're presented opportunities, like for me, it was Sid asking me to move to a different city. You're so lucky to be presented that opportunity. You should really take advantage of it in some instances.
Yeah.
Not everything deserves a yes, but you should be aware of your bias towards comfortable situations, and you should try to change that.
I love that. Yeah, definitely. Like, take it under a microscope. Like, why am I saying no right now? Because this scares me. Is that why? Because that's not reason enough.
Yeah. I've also seen so many people our age make excuses for not doing things that they want to do. Like, they have this long bucket list, and they haven't even touched it. And it's never going to get easier, and people anticipate it. All the excuses that I hear are things that probably aren't going to change.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I have work.
Okay.
Sweetie, you're 20 years old. When are you retiring? Anytime soon? I think that's going to be a barrier for a really long time.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I think that the yeses have also exponentially increased our knowledge of ourselves and what we're comfortable with and what we truly love and enjoy and not. Like, having not said yes for a period of time, you will miss out on all of these little pathways that lead to something special, niche, and something that you could truly enjoy, but you have no idea because you've never touched it or you've never been exposed to it. Like, the only reason we moved down to Charleston and all this was started is because I said yes to my sister inviting me to visit Charleston with her because she was potentially going to live there. And I was in school, I had exams, I didn't have much money, but I was like, I'm always down to go travel, hop on a plane. Like, we love the side quest. And I said yes, and that brought us to Charleston. And it was a series of yeses that led to these strangers on the side of the road, the weirdos who told me about kiteboarding, and they were the canon event for this entire life that I live in. I think Brie lives too.
Yeah.
So if you want to check that, that is episode number 1. I explained that entire story. But the point is, I never would have found out about kiteboarding if I didn't say yes, 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 and yes again, because I never would have met those individuals. I had no idea that existed. And now kiteboarding has absolutely changed my life.
That's a good point too, because I think people view saying yes to an opportunity like that as a singular event, but
Yes.
you don't know
It's
how
a
many
series.
doors it's gonna open for you when you walk through that initial one.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah. Yeah. But then, of course, there's the examples of the things you say yes to, and they're not for you at some point. And Bree went through this. She accepted a job in North Carolina. She went there. How long were you there? For almost 8 months?
Yeah, yeah, 8 months.
8 months. And, like, I'll let you tell a story. But eventually it wasn't for her. And that wasn't a bad thing. Like, you learned
Mm-hmm.
that you don't like this, you don't like this, you don't like this. And learning what you don't like is just as important, if not more important, than learning about what you do like.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point because the next thing that I was gonna say, point number 4, is knowing when to say no,
Yeah, true.
which is kind of an oxymoron, saying yes, saying no. But there's this quote that I really like, and it's that every no unlocks a higher value yes.
Mm-hmm.
And what that means is if you say no to something, you're just giving yourself more time to put energy into the things that you really care about.
Yeah.
And that's really powerful.
Yeah. And I feel like it's an evolution of kind of if you don't know what you love yet or what you truly want to do or what lights you on fire, you should probably be saying more yeses. But as you find that path and footing and whatever, then you have to start saying more no's. And there's a really interesting concept Chris, my boyfriend, told me about. He's like, it's this fun quote about a lion. A lion could catch field mice all day and eat, but the lion chooses to wait around for the gazelle or the larger animal because everything that you commit to, everything that you say yes to, that drains a portion of your energy. And the lion knows that it could easily catch these, but the field mice isn't going to feed it and its pride for months or weeks or whatever. So it waits around for the larger mammal to come around to prance at that and put a sprint towards that one huge thing, and it feeds it and its pride for weeks, months. And that's a really important lesson that we get to learn from our mother nature. There is another bigger opportunity sitting around the corner. And even if it's something you might say yes to, or if it's an opportunity that passed you by and you got denied this or whatever, there's always something bigger. There's always something better. Like, just be patient. Wait around. It takes.
Be a lion.
Be a lion.
For people listening, I'm actually holding on to a stuffed lion. Another way that I like to think about this, though, of knowing when to say yes or when to say no, is if you were watching your life as a movie and you're the main star, what would you be screaming at the screen for you to be doing?
Yeah. Or not be
You
doing.
you just need to look at it from an outside perspective. Like, people always talk, put yourself in their shoes. No, take yourself out of your shoes for a second. What do you see? So,
that perspective and also the younger version of you. Like, if you were about to embark on some journey or treat someone a certain way or whatever the case is, would younger you light up? Like, would they be proud of you? Or would they be disappointed in you? Or would they be like, come on, like, when you're young, you haven't been told by the world yet that you can't do things and you belong certain places and whatever. And that openness to places that you can go and the things you can achieve is important to carry with you your entire life. And if you can, as you face each situation, ask yourself 2 questions. What would younger me say? And what would I be saying if I was watching myself on a screen right now? And I think that would be a really cool way that you can navigate tough decisions or any decision.
yeah. I also feel like people our age feel constant pressure to be doing crazy things. And it's like, you can apply this to minor decisions too. Because, like we've said, the little things compound.
Yes, true.
You don't need to be hopping on a private jet to be an interesting person.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, that's a total misconception. Like, you don't need to have these wild travel stories, private jets, opportunities to be an interesting person. But there's such interesting lanes that pass us by every single day because we're not looking out for them or being open to them. And as soon as you start doing that and see the power of it, you'll never go back. You'll never go back. But there's some seasons in your life, like right now for me, after healing from this surgery, I literally can't. I can't do the things I want to do. And I've instead I've said no to the things that would obviously injure me further or push me in a time where it's time to heal and recover and really just focus on me. And that's cool too. And that's okay. And you can still be interesting by doing that. And that's when you start exploring your other passions, like making music. I've wrote a song. Like, what? Hello?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's because my ukulele was sitting out. And one day, that took me somewhere.
Yeah. If you are back against the wall, like, don't pound on the wall. Pivot, I think is the takeaway from that. Reason number 5 should be more interesting. Rejection therapy. There is a guy whose name I cannot remember right now, but he did what he called 100 days of rejection therapy, and he has his own website, and he recorded a series of these rejections, and they were hilarious. It was like asking a stranger to borrow $100 or turning donuts into Olympic rings, like asking a donut shop to do that, or going to Starbucks as someone who worked at Walmart and asking to be a Walmart grader at Starbucks so that Starbucks customers could have the Walmart experience.
That's so goofy.
And so he did this 100 days worth of things, and some of them are crazy, like talking to Obama, who was the president at the time. And he had such success from this that he now goes around to different corporate offices and talks about the science behind rejection therapy.
Oh, that's amazing.
But it's so fascinating how you can kind of exercise this muscle. And I don't think that the emotion of embarrassment ever feels less scary, but the situations that you feel embarrassed in, you can kind of acclimate to. And I wrote a list of 30 things that I want to do for rejection therapy to kind of get rid of hesitations in different situations. And it is so difficult. One of the things was asking a restaurant to name a item after me, like be a menu item pretty much, which would be so cool. And so I walked into Brugger's and I went to go be like, would you guys ever do a temporary bagel with X, Y, and Z, blah, blah, blah. None of that came out. I just got 2 Sriracha Honey Sunrise bagels, which are so amazing. And then I left and I sat in my car and I was like, why is that so hard? And I think that that was one of the worst things to choose to start off with, because it seems really conceited to me to like ask like, hey, can you go name? And so it was really difficult. Also, I go to this Brugger's all the time. Oh, like I do not want to be remembered as that girl. So, it was super difficult. But then when I was in my car, I crossed 2 other things off the list. And I called up a Tesla car salesman and I said, can you please teach me how to sell? And he walked me through some different points of how to be a successful salesperson. And I think he gave answers that Elon would be proud of. He was like, sales should not feel like a transaction. It should feel like a conversation. And he just gave a bunch of different points. But that was one thing that made me uncomfortable, and I felt really good after doing that. I actually learned a lot from that conversation. The second thing that I did after the failed Brugger's experience was I went to a coffee shop, and I asked them to teach me how to make latte art. And it was so cool. I learned so much. I was just doing everything wrong. And so it was a really great experience. And I have an espresso machine, and so now I can implement that.
That's great.
But rejection therapy is really powerful.
That's really impressive. I think that anyone who goes through rejection, it's a manufactured, like going through that list, that challenge that guy did, or if you sign up for a sales job, knocking doors, like I did one summer, trying to sell roofs. The point is, it was so, like you said, like I was just the annoying person at the door, interrupting people's lives, but I had to knock that door. I had to knock. And yeah, some people shut the doors in my face. Some people were really rude. But you just grow as a person, because the more times you can be told and be okay with that really represents growth as a person. And you don't always have to be liked. You don't always have to be told yes. That's life. I mean, like, the successful people have been told no more times than the average person has been told yes. And
it's important to get told no.
What was I gonna say? The fear of rejection. If you do more things that scare you, that fear tampers itself. If you, in your life, do more actually scary things, like climbing a mountain, scaling a mountain, trying new sports, entering these social situations that make you uncomfortable, the fear starts to become less big and scary, and you stop letting the fear stop you because you realize that this fear is nothing compared to that major fear I faced that one day in my life. And if you're ever facing a situation where you're scared or whatever, just sit there and reset for a second, because this isn't the worst it could ever be. Like, this is not the scariest thing ever. And when you compare the fear of a small ask or making someone uncomfortable or whatever to a much bigger, more extreme thing, it's kind of like, I don't know if you've ever been there, but I've definitely been. I'm like, oh, this is silly. I'm really afraid of this right now. Okay, I'm better than that because I've done much scarier things. And then you like move on it. But that fear comes back even for a person who has dropped out of college, moved across country, traveled to like 5 different countries, all within the span of a year. That was so much fear in such a short period of time. But I still find myself getting scared by the smallest thing. So it's not a one fix is all. It's a constant habit improvement and whatever that you just have to implement into your life.
Yeah, I think people are scared of trying because they're scared they're going to fail, but you automatically fail if you don't try. So,
that in itself is a failure. And if you were told that if it only took 30 more failures to achieve the wildest goal of your life, how many times, how fast would it take you to fail? It'd be like, I'd fail right now 30 times right in a row, right? And so if you can seek failure, actually, if you can seek rejection, I think you'll find more success faster.
yeah, I would agree. It is important to look like when you do fail, though, why?
Yeah.
And reflecting on it. Otherwise, you won't see growth out of
Yeah.
that. But don't be scared to fail.
Yeah, journal about that shit. Like,
Yeah, learn from it.
you have to write it down. You have to reflect. You can't just live through that, let the pain hurt you, and go to bed.
Yeah. It's not an actual failure then. Like, if you tried, I really don't think that you can fail. Like, you might not achieve the goal that you set out to get, but it becomes an experience that you can then use moving forward. And so it's really not a failure. It's something that you can utilize.
It's data. It's feedback.
Yeah.
If you're not winning, you're losing. But it's actually, if you're not winning, you're learning. But ultimately, if you're not winning, well, you're also winning because you're learning. And if you can really implement that into every single situation that you face and realize that there's a takeaway, there's something I learned here that will improve my life, you will live a much more joyful life. I feel so.
I guess the question that I would ask you is, what would you add to this list?
I think a really killer one that's missing is authenticity. I think that the people who just, and this is kind of a lot of these bundled up into one, but if you face that fear of being truly seen as who you are, and if you're just honest about what are your intentions behind what you're doing, and if you're honest with a person about how that just made you feel, I find those people to be really interesting. I'm most fascinated by the people who lean so far into that honesty and authenticity has become a buzzword, unfortunately.
Yeah, I feel like it's something that you can't really measure. Like, what do you look for that you think makes someone authentic? Because I don't think anyone is intentionally unauthentic. You know, I don't think anyone goes out and is like, yep, I'm fake.
Yeah. I agree with that. I think people are either trying to, in the smaller situations, shield others from something, or in a grander scale, not being honest with yourself about what you truly desire and want to do. Like, someone who's in this just for the money and because it's safe, you're not doing the best job that you can, and you simply, it's a foundation that is cracked. And so once you start diving into a life where you're truly chasing your passion, what lights you up, and not just security and money and status. I think status is a big one. I think that ego and status, by chasing those, if those are your objectives, you're immediately inauthentic. Immediately. Because those are such shallow objectives compared to what lights your soul on fire, you know? And so often people choose the first option when you can't find your people that you belong with, and you can't find the opportunities that will bring you the most joy by chasing those first two.
Yeah, I feel like there is a balance though that can be struck because some of that first is like what brings people security and sense of mind, and I feel like
Yeah.
it's really hard to be authentic and transparency if you don't have
Yeah.
that as a base.
Yeah. You do definitely need. It's like the hierarchy of basic needs or something. I can't remember.
Or is it Maslow's?
Maslow's? Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's like first you need to be fed and put under a roof. Then the next level is like, I don't know. One of the top levels, though, is emotionally secure.
Yeah, once your physical needs are met, then you can like work on social well-being and other aspects of yourself.
Yeah. But I think people's standards, everyone's different, and that's okay. And I think that people's standards of security, though, are a lot, like, honestly, the fact that we live in America and we can work and we can get a job, we have it really good compared to a lot, 90% of this planet Earth. And I think people's gauge on what security actually looks like is really skewed and manufactured by this desire to do more, to ego chase, to whatever. Like, you really don't need that much money to be okay, ultimately. Even if you're sleeping on a couch. Like, that makes it harder to explore whatever. But that goes back to this ego death or rejection therapy. Like, us not knowing where the fuck we're gonna sleep tonight for that 1 week we're in Charleston and, like, the rest of our experience couch hopping. That was ego death, and I think that story we get to carry forever. And when we were in it deep and we were like, actually, like, shit, dude, what are we gonna do tonight? I think I was able to revert back to a comfort in knowing that this is gonna make a great story one day. This is gonna be an asset. This story's gonna be an asset. I'm gonna tell it. People are gonna find it interesting. It's gonna be a brand building thing, whatever. And I think if you can find the comfort and safety knowing that you're intentionally putting yourself in a position that is less secure for a grander outcome, like the lion, I think that perspective is really important to consider. And just checking that gauge of what truly is security and safety and whatever.
Yeah, you do have to be willing to make sacrifices to achieve big goals. If you do what you've always done, you're going to get the results you've always got.
One thing I do want to add about the authenticity piece too is that if you're being authentic, you give others more a chance to find themselves in you. And the more that you can lay it out on the floor, display an emotion that someone else feels too, you say the thing that everyone's thinking but no one dared to say out loud. And I think that everyone will connect to you and remember you.
Yeah. The easiest example of that is when everyone's afraid to ask a question.
Yeah.
And you're just all sitting there wondering the same thing, and then someone finally asks a question, and you're all like, thank God.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be like, I'm kind of wondering. Like, the people who ask more questions and name the things and say their fears out loud ultimately are the people who will fail faster, win faster, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, you gotta spit it out, because who wants to sit there confused? Like, just move.
Yeah, it's such a waste of time. It's such a waste of time to be confused. Be the person that asks questions. I find those people really intriguing. People who ask more questions. That is a very high predictor of future success. Is the people who are always curious, more curious, learning more.
I agree.
Authenticity doesn't have to be such a complex thing. And Brie told me a story recently that also kind of connects to that, how to be more well-spoken, and that situation you faced in the cafe. You were serving, there was a person who didn't speak a lick of English.
Oh, yeah.
And tell that story.
Yeah, so I work as a server, and someone came in who was from Turkey, I believe. And it came time for them to close out their tab, and I present them with, we have these like little toast monitors, and all he had to do was leave a tip and sign. His card had worked, but I was using gestures to communicate with him, and he wasn't understanding. So I just clicked no tip because I'm not going to tip myself.
Yeah.
And I just was like, you just need to sign. Like, I can't sign for you. And so I showed him, I said, I went and I signed for him and I X'd out of it so that he could then do it. Just repeat the same motion that I just did. And he kept trying to tap his card thinking that his card hadn't gone through. And so I'm just like showing him how to sign again, clicking X and just repeating the process. And it's like a 5-minute standoff, and I'm standing there like, oh my gosh, I need to get to my other tables. Like, I have a lot of other stuff to do. This gentleman he's just sigh. And I don't get flustered or anything with him. It's really a heartwarming experience. And he finally just taps the screen. Like, the tiniest little pixel dot appears from his tap. And the machine accepts it as a signature. And so I literally start jumping up and down, and I'm like, yay! And he gets so excited. This gentleman, just little old man, gets the biggest smile on his face. And it's actually adorable. It made my day. And so then he starts like clapping, getting all excited. And I'm just like, that was not the response that I was expecting from him. I guess I didn't really know that even came out of me. And so our transaction finishes. I go to my other tables. He goes to leave. On his way out, he literally stops, pulls up a translator, which would have been super helpful during the interaction, and says in broken English on the screen, like, I'll be back. Great experience. Thank you. It wasn't even that great. Like, that wasn't even the English that was on the screen. But it was hilarious.
Yeah, and it's such a beautiful human experience that didn't require language. And it was just, like you said, you walked away so heartwarming. And if I watched that from the side, or just you saying that, like, makes me joyful, because it doesn't require that deep of a level of understanding of each other. All you did, your authenticity and your reaction of a positive joy was the authenticity, and the part that made that it was such a small accomplishment, but it was such a big celebration of that. And I think a lot of times we suppress our celebration or our pride that we feel, I don't know, in an attempt to be, I don't know, we just end up being more.
Yeah. People almost think it's more tactful to be that way, but if you approach a conversation without thinking about it in that light, you become a lot more charming.
Yeah, truly. Anyway, it's just really cute. That's such a wholesome experience. And you said it yourself, you're like, I was busy, I had so many other tables I had to wait on, and you could have chosen to be impatient and stuck up and worried about every other piece of noise going on in that moment, but you decided to sit with this man and figure this out, you and him together. I just think it's really powerful. I don't know.
Yeah, it was a really cool exchange.
Yeah. So that was a cool story. I want to make sure you brought that up here today.
So, 5 ways to become a more interesting person. Really 6 with that last one.
Yeah.
Number 1, articulating yourself better. 2 is changing your environment. 3, saying yes. 4, saying no. 5, rejection therapy. And 6, authenticity.
If you start implementing these 6 ways into your life, you will find more opportunities and more joy, and you will be a more interesting individual.
What's one thing that people can start tomorrow that will be an instant upgrade?
Today, they can start. I think the really cool thing is asking those 2 questions. Like, what would younger me say, or what would me say if I was sitting on the screen watching this story play out? I think that's like a really cool habit you can implement. What situation are you facing right now? Or what decision do you have to make? And then ask those 2 questions.
Yeah. You don't know where to go if you don't evaluate where you're at now.
Yeah, there's a strategic way to look at what you have and what you're facing and move forward.
I think I know what you're saying. You have to figure out where you are, so you know what direction you need to head in to achieve your goals. And from there, like, you need to map it out and be strategic, because some of what we said isn't going to apply to people. If you already have insane stories, you need to channel your energy into different areas.
Mm-hmm.
You know, totally. like there's specific examples that we gave, and people should know if that applies to them or not, and figuring that out is the first step.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you could take a look at that 6 and evaluate really quick, like in a journal. Please whip out a journal or do something. Write it down and be like, how do these apply to my life right now? Could I implement this today? Could I implement this tomorrow? And send this to a friend. Send this to a friend who could also find this useful.
Level up together.
Yeah.
If you see one of these applies to you, maybe it applies to your friend, and then you can work on it together.
Yeah, be the person that provides your homies more resources to level up. And the number one way you can do that right now is send them this podcast. Anyway, I think that's the pod.
That cannot be it. You know what? You should show this, and we can be like, this is us being authentic. Join the kids. Kids. Be a kid like us. Don't be an adult. Bye.
I like that. Don't be an adult. All right, bye. Maybe we just don't say goodbye.
And that's the end of the weather report. This is the longest Minnesota goodbye ever.
I mean, we could just say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Okay, goodbye.
Peace out.
Kids out.
Kids out.
I don't know if that's what we said, but I think that sounds good.
Kids out.
All right. The kids out. Oh, yeah.
Sayonara. Adios. Bye-bye.
In how many languages can you say goodbye? List them all right now. Ciao. Adios. Au revoir.
Bislema.
What's that?
Tunisian.
And Japanese? You don't know bye?
Sayonara. Sayonara.
That's Japanese.
Yeah.
Oh, sayonara. See you in Onabia.
See you later, alligator. After a while, crocodile.
Peace out.
Peace out.